The small town of Oak Hollow had always been a peaceful place. Nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, it was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone and strangers were a rare sight. The streets were quiet, and the night air was always calm, except for the eerie hum that had started to seep through the town's local radio station. The town's radio station, WKTH, had been a staple of Oak Hollow for years. It broadcasted a mix of local news, music, and weather updates, mostly to a handful of die-hard listeners who enjoyed the small-town charm. But for the past few weeks, something had changed. The station's regular programming had been interrupted by strange, cryptic messages. At first, it was dismissed as technical difficulties, a malfunction of some kind, but as the days passed, the messages grew more unsettling. "They're coming. It's too late to run. You can't hide. You are already here." The messages were brief, haunting, and barely audible over the static. Some listeners reported hearing distorted voices, deep, guttural growls, and others swore they could hear whispers in the background, as if something or someone was trying to speak through the noise. A few brave souls ventured into the radio station to investigate, but none returned with answers. The station was left abandoned, its airways filled with nothing but the eerie static and the cryptic words. It was one evening, a few days before Halloween, when things took a darker turn. A group of 5 individuals, the local journalist Hannah, the town sheriff, Mark, and a small team of specialists, decided to investigate the source of the disturbance. They had heard the whispers and seen the mounting paranoia in Oak Hollow. People were beginning to get nervous. Some of the more superstitious locals had even started claiming that the radio signals were signs of an ancient curse, a warning from another world. Anna, always the skeptic, had decided to investigate, hoping to uncover the truth behind the rumors. She gathered a team of experts: Mark, the experienced sheriff; Lucas, a tech specialist who could trace radio signals; Rachel, a historian from the local library with a particular interest in Oak Hollow's folklore; and David, a retired radio technician. The team arrived at the station late in the evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon. The building was old, its windows dark and cracked. A single light flickered from within. The air was thick with tension as they approached the front door. "Let's get this over with," Mark said, his voice low and filled with unease. He had seen his fair share of strange things, but this felt different. They entered the building, the smell of dust and mildew hitting them immediately. The main room of the station was silent, save for the hum of machinery. The walls were lined with old radio equipment, mixers, transmitters, and speakers, all untouched for weeks. On the far side of the room, the radio tower loomed, a tall, rusted structure reaching upward into the dark sky. "Let's find out what's going on," Anna said, her voice cutting through the silence. She walked toward the main control board, flipping switches and checking the dials. Lucas immediately set to work, setting up his equipment to trace the source of the signal. "Strange," Lucas muttered. "The signal's coming from everywhere. It's not just the radio station." "What do you mean?" Mark asked, stepping closer. "The signal, it's coming from another dimension," Lucas said, his voice trembling. "There's no logical explanation for this. It's coming from somewhere outside our world." Rachel, who had been examining the walls, suddenly turned pale. "There's something written here. Look." She pointed to a faded symbol etched into the wall, almost hidden by layers of dust. It was a strange, circular design with intricate patterns, like an ancient rune or sigil. David, who had been quiet up until that point, stepped forward, his eyes scanning the symbol. This is something I've seen before. In old occult texts. It's an ancient gateway symbol. It's supposed to open a door between worlds." Anna's stomach churned. She had thought this was going to be a simple investigation into a malfunctioning radio. But now, it seemed like they were dealing with something much darker. The air in the room grew colder. Lucas's equipment began to malfunction, the dials spinning wildly, the speakers emitting garbled sounds. Then, the radio crackled to life. A voice, deep and distorted, filled the airwaves. "You've come just in time." The voice was not human. It sounded alien, otherworldly. There was a sinister undertone to the words, as though the speaker was aware of their every move. The group stood frozen, listening as the voice continued. "The barrier is weakening. You are so close to crossing over. There is no turning back. Shut it off." Mark yelled, but the radio wouldn't respond. The static grew louder, and the air grew heavier, like a weight was pressing down on them. Suddenly, the building shook. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and a deafening roar filled the air, as if the world itself was beginning to collapse. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into total darkness. "Get out of here!" Anna screamed, but the door wouldn't open. It was stuck, as if something from the other side had latched onto it. Then, a faint whisper came through the static. "You cannot leave. You never will." A freezing wind howled through the room. Shadows danced on the walls, growing taller, more distorted. The radio continued to play, but now it was no longer just voices. The sound of something moving in the static, shuffling, scraping, began to fill the space, like claws dragging across a hard surface. Rachel screamed, her hands flying to her ears in an attempt to block out the noise. The others followed suit, but it was useless. The whispers, the growls, the scratching, all of it seemed to come from everywhere. And then, out of the corner of her eye, Anna saw it. A figure, a silhouette standing just beyond the control room door. At first, it was just a shadow, a tall, thin shape with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. But as it moved closer, the details became clearer. The figure had no face, only a smooth, featureless surface where its face should have been. "Mark!" Anna cried, but Mark had already turned toward the figure. His eyes were wide, filled with terror. The air around him crackled with energy as the figure seemed to draw closer, its form distorting as if it was slipping in and out of reality. The ground trembled again, and the walls began to warp, stretching and bending. The radio emitted a loud screech, and the figure lunged forward, its movement unnatural and jerky. Anna instinctively reached for the nearest object, a heavy radio mic stand, and swung it at the shadow. It passed through the figure, like it was made of smoke. The entity shrieked, a high-pitched sound that tore through their minds, sending them to their knees in agony. The air grew thick, suffocating. A deep, gurgling noise came from the walls, as if something was pushing its way into their world. They could feel the presence growing, could hear its whispers, its laughter, taunting them. "Stay with me," Anna shouted, grabbing Rachel's arm, but Rachel was gone. Her body, now nothing more than a hollow shell, crumpled to the floor. The life had drained from her eyes, and the rest of the group realized with growing horror that the entity was feeding on their fear. Lucas dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. His body twisted unnaturally, and his mouth opened, but no sound came out. His eyes were wide in terror, but it was too late. Anna looked around at the remaining team members. They had no way out. They had been drawn into the rift, and now the entity, an ancient, malevolent force, was using their presence to cross over into their world. The doorway had been opened. The town of Oak Hollow was doomed. As the entity moved closer, Anna realized the truth. The radio wasn't just a medium, it was the portal. Every broadcast, every word, had been a call, a summoning to bring the darkness into their world. With a final scream, Anna was pulled into the blackness, her mind lost in the void between worlds. and the radio station stood silent once again.